Hello there, friends. Welcome to BJJ Meditations. This is BJJ Meditations, episode number 57. I'm your host, Joe Hannon. Welcome to the show. I'm back from a brief work trip. I say very brief work trip. Was away for only a night, but it was one of those trips where I came away from it feeling like I had been gone for a week or more. Very intense work that went on in this trip from a coaching standpoint and also from like a personal development standpoint. Had this session with an HRV specialist, and we did a full workup on how my body responds to stress. And I came away from this workup with a new sense of understanding of myself and sort of my woundedness. As I've mentioned obliquely on the show in previous episodes, I had some sexual abuse as a kid, and I've sort of carried that woundedness with me for the rest of my life ever since. And in recent years, I've made some real headway working with a brilliant clinical psychologist to like unpack this and unwind some of these trauma patterns. And I also similarly, although indirectly at the time, I didn't know that this is what I was working on, but I also in my early to mid 20s, I had some incredible breakthroughs working with a chiropractor who was sort of unwinding all of these physiological patterns and stress responses that had taken root in my body. So I kind of view that period of time as one chapter in this journey. Then I see chapter 2 as work with this clinical psychologist, which has been happening now for a couple of years. And then I see chapter 3 as this HRV work and what that might reveal. But essentially what I learned in Boston is that HRV, which is an indication of sort of ease or parasympathetic activity in the body and the nervous system, generally speaking, HRV goes up the more at ease a person is. But my physiology is essentially the opposite. And the way I've been joking about this with friends is that like I have George Costanza physiology. There's this brilliant episode of Seinfeld where George is saying how he feels like every decision he's ever made in his life is wrong. And then Jerry points out to him, well, like if you did the opposite then of what you were naturally inclined, then you would have better outcomes. So there's this brilliant scene where George is at the diner and he meets this woman and he introduces himself and he says, "Hi, my name is George. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents." And she kind of smiles at him and goes, "Hi, my name's Veronica." And that's sort of the beginning of George turning his situation around. So I have George Costanza physiology. My HRV actually improves in times of stress. And I'm talking like real stress, like life or death situations or really intense periods where like I cannot think. I just have to act. This was sort of like a hallmark of my career in the newspaper industry where I was at my best during times when the shit was hitting the fan. One part of this assessment, for example, was to tell a very stressful story. So I told this story about when I was 10 and I was out hunting. I was actually held at gunpoint briefly by this cocaine-addled North Jersey deer hunter. And yeah, my physiology kind of did what you would expect. Like my heart rate went up, but there was a slight increase in heart rate variability. But then interestingly, my heart rate variability never recovers. It just gets depleted and the battery sort of never recharges. So the work ahead, the work to do is sort of this learning to recharge. And I'm very excited to take that on. But, holy fuck, is that some challenging shit to sit with? But at the same time, it's physiological proof of something I've known and felt about myself, like since I was 10, 11. So it's nice to know that what I've been feeling all these years, I'm 37 now. So what I've been feeling all these years, like has a physiological basis in reality. So that's great. I'm sitting with a lot of that. And I'm sitting with a lot of brilliant clients. I'm working on a number of you are, I think, are regular listeners to this podcast. And I'm beyond grateful to sort of be on the path with you, this path of self-discovery, and of being true to ourselves, of becoming and being real motherfuckers through this wonderful art of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And even if you don't do jujitsu and we work together or we don't work together, like whatever your thing is, it's wonderful to be on the path with you as we just try to become more real. And in one of those client interactions, somebody asked me about this theme of discipline, which I want to unpack a bit on this podcast episode today. Specifically, how do I relate to discipline? And it's a weird subject for me because when I think of discipline, I think of Jocko Willink, discipline equals freedom, which is obviously an ethos that I agree with and abide by in my own way. And in my mind, he owns that territory, right? He has a certain approach that appeals to certain people at certain points in their life. And for a while, I kind of have distanced myself from that ethos. Not that I've stopped being disciplined, but I've felt like I don't really have much value to offer there. But in my client asking me to talk about this a bit with him, I kind of have changed my mind. I think maybe I do have some insights to offer around discipline, because I think that by and large, and I think the overall image of Jocko, and I'm sure he would disagree with this, I certainly disagree with this perception too, is that his discipline is externally oriented, meaning it's a discipline that is instilled upon you, as you might think stereotypically of someone in the military. You know, you go to boot camp and you have this discipline, this structure, this rigor imposed upon you. My discipline, my sense of self-discipline has always been the opposite. It's emanated from within. And I kind of see this as one of my superpowers. And because it's one of my superpowers, I feel a little bit weird talking about it, because I fully and readily admit that I am wired for this shit. Like I'm just built differently when it comes to this. So I feel strange as a mutant freak telling people to embody this quality. So I'm trying to walk this line of talking about how I relate to discipline in a way in which you don't feel like this is the way you need to relate to it. What I want you to get away from this is to find your own way to make discipline work for you. Ultimately, you need to carve your own path through this thing we're calling discipline here. So the way I relate to discipline, to me, there are 4 aspects of discipline, and each one is underpinned by a value that I hold very closely. So I've already alluded to the first aspect of discipline, and that's self-discipline. And previously, as a younger person, the value that underpinned self-discipline for me was instilling this sense of order. But as I've gotten older, especially as I've had a child, it's become something that's, I think, a bit warmer. And it's a responsibility to and a love of self. And the love aspect is what was missing before. And ultimately, I've come to appreciate this as I've gotten older, as I've become more entrenched in my professional life, because at the end of the day, you have to take care of you. Yes, you're responsible, especially as an adult, you're responsible for so many other people, so many other situations. If you're a parent, you have a love for your child that supersedes a love for yourself and supersedes everything. Like I know so many parents who give up so much of themselves just to give their children a better life. But we cannot do that unless we have self-discipline in the form of maintaining that love and sense of caring for ourselves. This is a huge thing I've been working on with my therapist now for the past 2 years. So again, all of these values, they're these big amorphous abstract things. What I want to talk about with each one of them are the habits and practices that have the rubber meet the road, so to speak. You know, how do we put this amorphous thing into being, making it a reality? So for me, it's how I structure my day. I make sure that my mornings are, for the most part, again, life is going to intervene, but I try to make it so that my first hour of my day is a time when I can quietly reflect, I can meditate, do a bit of journaling. Strength and conditioning. I show self-love and responsibility to myself by making sure my body is strong, or at least able to move, or in less pain. I essentially give myself what I need in that given moment, or what I want in that given moment, whether that's a hard workout like yesterday to get stronger, or on Sunday, I negotiated with Frances, my wife, to have a couple hours at a local spa where I could just do contrast therapy. All these things make a meaningful difference: quality nutrition, quality sleep, and seeking assistance when needed. And this is an important one, I think, for the men in the audience here. And by the YouTube statistics, I think the YouTube audience is 100% male, if not 99% male. And I don't get gender breakdown on the podcast audience, but I know there are men, mostly men, listening out here on YouTube. I don't know why this is, but men in particular have such a hard time seeking clinical assistance when needed, and that can be for physical, mental, emotional, psychological injury. It doesn't matter. There's this reluctance to seek help, and I think it revolves around this reluctance to admit "quote unquote" weakness. And I'm here to tell you, like, denying that necessity for help and assistance is just like self-flagellation. You're just beating yourself up needlessly. It's like, if you think about it, most of you have pets. Some of you have children. If your pet or your child were in pain, physical or emotional, you would move heaven and earth to do whatever you can to help alleviate that pain, to move them to a better spot. But chances are you wouldn't extend the same kindness to yourself. And I'm here to tell you that I would not be talking to you today if I had not embodied this practice and this quality. And ultimately, it ties into this responsibility to and a love of self. You don't do that, you can't take care of anybody else. So that's how I relate to that pillar of discipline. The other pillar of discipline, pillar 2, is interpersonal discipline. And the value that underpins interpersonal discipline for me is a responsibility to and a love of others. It's the yang to the yin of the previous pillar. I think that ultimately one of the most noble things a human being can do is to live a life of service, to conduct deeds, and to support verbally other people, all people of all walks of life. And that's an aspiration, right? And it sounds really great on a Hallmark card, looks really great in a Hallmark Christmas movie, but how do we sort of make that vision a reality? And again, I'm about to tell you how I do it. I'm not encouraging you to replicate this wholesale, but ultimately discipline boils down to what we say we're going to do versus what we actually do. And these are the things that I actually do. Following through on commitments, that's huge for me. This might even be a little bit socialized on my part because so much of my identity is wrapped up around this notion that I do what I say I'm going to do, to the point where if I don't follow through on a commitment, even if it's illogical or suboptimal, I don't feel like I'm me. I feel like I'm somebody else. So there's like a little bit of a caveat there so you can understand why I say it's important for you to relate to these things on your own, because not all of how I relate to these things is sort of fundamentally, emotionally, psychologically sound. But anyway, doing what I say I'm going to do. Another one is true listening and feeling, this quality of presence. And I'm no angel or saint when it comes to this. There are plenty of times when I'm listening to somebody and I have an idea of what I want to say next, and the listening stops, and I'm just trying not to lose the thing I want to say or the point I want to make. But I strive for that quality of presence where I'm truly just receiving, integrating, and then responding in a truly spontaneous way. Another thing I do, affirmation and support via deeds and words. This is something I alluded to when I was first introducing this principle. It's part of this life of service. It's very easy to criticize and complain. It's much harder to uplift for a lot of people. And I'm not quite sure why that is. I guess maybe there's a fear of being perceived a certain way if you go out of your way to affirm and uplift. But I think it's hugely important. Life is hard. We all carry around this constant pain and stress, and physical and emotional pain and stress. And I can't tell you how many times in my life a kind word from a friend or even a stranger has just totally changed my day, has changed the trajectory of my day. Maybe it's even changed the trajectory of my month or year in ways I haven't seen. So I think when we can do that and truly mean it and have it truly be sincere, it's important to do. Giving undivided attention, that's closely related to this idea of presence that I already talked about. And then the final thing is admitting when I'm wrong, imprecise, or have otherwise erred. This is so goddamn hard because we all, I think, strive for perfection and fall short. We hold ourselves to higher standards. If you're like me, you probably hold yourself to a higher standard than you hold others. So it's very, very difficult to fully own our mistakes. I'm speaking for myself here. There was a situation last night or yesterday with my wife where I had been gone for work and I was trying to get my son out the door for school, and none of his coats were around. I had no idea where his jackets were. It was like 30 some odd degrees out. His breakfast was nowhere to be found, even though I was being told it was in the refrigerator. And, I called my wife for the third time that morning and asked about like, where is this stuff? And I kind of just hung up on her abruptly. And that was the situation where I could have very easily just not made an attempt to repair that injurious gesture of hanging up the phone. And there are so many times in the history of our marriage where I have just ignored that. But I'm making an effort in the interest of interpersonal discipline to admit when I make mistakes like that, big and large, to confirm that indeed I made the mistake, and then to offer an apology. And I think this is hugely important from a parenting standpoint, because otherwise your children grow up with this imprecise idea of who you are. Or maybe worst case, they grew up with this idea and perception of your own hypocrisy. And that's not something I want. I want to be sincere to my son. I want to own my mistakes. I want to own my own hypocrisy. I want him to see me as a flawed human being. And it all starts with this commitment to interpersonal discipline. Pillar 3, technical discipline. This is where, all you guys who are here just for the Jiu Jitsu talk, you're like, thank you, God. He's finally going to talk about something that I give a shit about. Yes, technical discipline. Big manifestation of this in my life is Jiu Jitsu. But higher order, the value underpinning this is responsibility to and a love of learning, of technical mastery. So it doesn't have to be Jiu Jitsu. If you're like a world champion sheep shearer, then your pursuit of technical discipline can be in sheep shearing. It can be in CrossFit if you love hurting yourself. It can be in bow hunting. It can be in whatever you want, whatever thing that forces you to stretch beyond your current technical skills, I think is a vehicle for training in technical discipline. So yes, the habits and practices that reinforce this are refining my jiu-jitsu, and it's now layered. Like as a black belt, it goes beyond refining my jiu-jitsu. It's about refining my abilities as a coach. And that transcends what happens on the mats. It's every time I walk into a coaching space with clients, either who train or don't train jiu-jitsu, how can I refine my technical skills as a coach? And really everything I've just mentioned and the next pillar tie back into refining those coaching abilities. I need to have a love of myself and a love of others, discipline in those two domains in order to be an effective coach. And I need to have psychological discipline as well. These pillars, they really cannot stand. They're supported by each other. They constitute this whole that is interdependent. So we really, in my mind, we really can't have just one or overemphasize one or the others. Other ways I sort of manifest or attempt to manifest this technical discipline in my life: studying great writers and communicators. I'm constantly reading. I'm trying to read outside my comfort zone, but it gets so damn hard because I just get enamored with certain writers like Hiroki Murakami, and I just want to read everything he ever wrote. And a year goes by and I haven't read any other fiction, but it is what it is. And also, embracing experiences that are outside of my norms. This is something I'm hoping to do more of as Cormac gets older. And if we have another child and they get a little bit older and more independent, I want to take on experiences that are outside of my norms. I want to go to different schools more often, just like I used to when I was a blue belt and a purple belt. I want to take on swimming. I haven't had swim lessons since I was a kid. I'm an okay swimmer. But my time surfing in Costa Rica just revealed to me how much ground I have to gain there. And I want to embrace that discomfort. I want to work outside of my comfort zone. So technical discipline, refining one's technical skills, the things that one does in the world. And then final pillar of discipline, which I find is the most challenging one to uphold, is psychological discipline. And I look at the value that underpins this is kind of strange for me. It's a responsibility to and a love of mystery. I think that in today's world, there's not a ton of mystery left. And it seems like our world gets smaller and smaller, and perhaps larger and larger too, as we illuminate the darkness that surrounds it. Imagine like a little thought experiment. Put yourself back in time before we knew that the earth was round. Imagine how that just changes your perception of reality. There's doubt. I suppose there's doubt around the roundness of the world right now, but there's doubt and debate as to like what shape the world is in. There's a ton of mystery there. Or put yourself in a time before the discovery of atomic and subatomic particles. Put yourself in a time back before the discovery of germs and microbes as a source of illness. There's a whole lot more mystery and awe in life. And awe doesn't necessarily have to be a positive thing. You know, it can certainly be awe-inspiring. A state of awe does not necessarily mean positive. It can be a menacing awe. It could be the equivalent of being on the precipice of an erupting volcano. You know, you might be in awe, but also in mortal terror. Facing mystery, I think, is one of the last fonts of creativity and inspiration that we have. And every year, there's a little bit less mystery. So how do I cultivate mystery? How do I cultivate this psychological discipline? Basic practices I talk about often on this show: meditation, journaling, time in nature, studying spirituality. I'm on like a real Eastern religion kick right now. And what I do is I selectively implement these things. You know, I'm not here, to follow any religion wholesale. It's almost like I'm creating my own. No, I don't even want to say religion, because religion is something that's organized. It's something that's traceable. I'm creating my own sort of map, my own mystery map of understanding what mystery is left in this experience called life. And I think that one of the biggest things we can do from a habit standpoint in terms of preserving this sense of mystery, this openness, this awe, this receptivity to experience, is limiting and being very judicious about what we consume, particularly on social media. You know, there's just so much more junk content out there that can keep us satisfied and stupid. And I really do feel like it pollutes these channels in our head for mystery. So I'm trying to do a better job in terms of habits and practices in limiting my consumption and being more selective of what I consume. And it all ties back to this responsibility to and a love of mystery, this pillar of psychological discipline. So that's how I relate to this idea of discipline. It's, as you can probably tell, you know, it's very different from the Jocko sort of approach, but it really isn't when you get down to it. You know, Jocko has created this roadmap of his experience in his language, using his methods. And that was the message that I needed so many years ago. Be more self-authoring, you know, embrace the suck. When life hands you like a shit sandwich, you know, just say good. And I really do appreciate that, but it's a starting point, you know, and I'm sure Jocko had his own starting points. And, I think he would probably agree with me that it's important that we kind of make our own inroads on that path toward our own sense of discipline. But, and I would certainly agree with him that there's real freedom in living your life in that sort of way. So hopefully that shakes loose some thoughts about how you might create your own pillars of discipline and arrange habits around them that support it. And I think Jiu Jitsu naturally is a great place to train those principles. That's all I got for you this week. As I always say, go to the website. That's where you can book an in-person coaching session with me or online coaching session with me. A lot of people I'm working with right now seem to be getting a ton of value out of that. And it's the best way to support the mission here at BJJ Meditations. You could also make donations to offset production costs of the podcast. Excuse me. It costs me about $15 a month to host the podcast, so it doesn't take much more. It doesn't take much money to make a meaningful difference there. You could read some of the essays that underpin episodes. Check out the website. One more do I have to say, people. Check out the highest levels on BJJ Mental Models Premium. It's a show I do with Emily Kwok. You can get a free 7-day trial of BJJ Mental Models Premium over on their website. If you're interested in sponsoring BJJ Meditations, you can email me, bjjmeditations@gmail.com. Please like, subscribe, and review and share to support the podcast wherever you're listening. You can follow on Instagram, though I'm trying to spend less time there, BJJ_meditations. You can read me on Substack. I alluded to that story about being held at gunpoint as a boy when I was 10. I wrote a short story about that, and I'm going to be publishing that on Substack sometime this month. So if you're interested in reliving that terror with me, go check it out. And finally, come train at Princeton Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, where we will not subject you to reliving any terror. In fact, we will treat you well. We will go out of our way to make you feel welcome, regardless of whatever academy you come from. And the only thing that will change my mind about that is if you're a total dickhead or if your gi is smelly. So please come with a smile and come with clean apparel, and we're more than happy to train with you. Thanks for listening, folks, and we'll talk next week.